and welcome to the Slingshot channel. The weather is super lousy outside today, therefore we'll do an indoor video about one of my most favorite knife designs, the Karambits. I have three models I'd like to show you. The first one is this Mtech Karambit, and actually it's a very inexpensive little knife. I bought it for around 22 euros on Amazon Germany, and I think you can get it as low as like $14 in the US. They say it's designed in the US but handmade in China, for whatever that means. The blade is 440 stainless steel with a stone washed optic. It's also the same thing on the frame. And it got G10 handles, really pretty in blue, and I really appreciate those. And it is an assisted opener. This means that there is a spring assistance. When you open it, it really opens like a switchblade. Because really it doesn't feel like an assisted opener, because you have this little lever here that when you press on it, it snaps open instantly. It's very cool. I love it. The edge is semi-serrated, which I find very useful, because you can cut ropes and so on with this serrated part, and this is just for regular cutting. This is probably, certainly not the greatest knife in history, but I think it's a great deal for the money. And again, this is not a sponsored video. I bought it at full price on Amazon. The second one is one that I made myself at home for parts that are certainly less than $1. So I call it a 90 cents knife. And here you can see that the blade is actually a used Stanley blade that I cut in shape. And now it's really a very lightweight, therefore very quick, but also very dangerous knife because it's so sharp. In any case, there is a making of a little tutorial that teaches you how to make one of these, and I'm going to show you the knife in action later on. These blades are actually very hard, so this means that they are a lot harder than all the knife blades of the other knives, but of course they're also truly brittle. It's quite easy to break them. Therefore, they cannot really be used in a longer form, so they must be kept short to be effective. The third one is this one. I just bought it on Amazon for around 70 euros, and that includes the 19% VAT sales tax that we have in Germany. This means that in the US you can probably get it for, I don't know, maybe $55, $60 or so. And what I love about this one, first of all, it's real big and viciously curved, but also the knife actually is made of a folded material. So it's like Damascus steel. I don't think it's quite the correct term for it, but it is folded, and it is stated that the steel is a mixture of 1090 steel and 1520 steel. Therefore, they've done it exactly the right way, combining a very soft but also almost indestructible steel with a very hard but a little bit brittle steel. And by folding these two components over and over, you get these patterns that only come up when you etch the blade. But these are the patterns of the two different steel types, and it gives it the hardness of a 1090 steel, but also the flexibility of a 1520 steel. The handle is actually really nice. It's made from a layered wood, like plywood a little bit, but of course more like diamond wood. See, it's nicely colored. And there are also inlays. I think these are brass inlays. It's really well polished, and there's even a pattern in the back. This is quite obviously a handmade knife, although in detail it lacks a little bit. Like the polishing doesn't really apply to the inner part of the ring here, and also these edges are quite sharp. So I think I have to invest a little more time to make it perfect. But other than that, for this price, it's amazing. The only thing is, I have no idea who makes it. I have some hints, and maybe you guys can help me finding out who manufactured these knives. It is quite funny that actually all these knives that I bought, like 3 of them within the last, I don't know, 5-6 years, have the same peculiar button here, the rivet. And it says State of Oklahoma 1907. So this is the Great Seal of the state of Oklahoma, of course. I guess these knives have not been made in Oklahoma, because at that price, nobody in Oklahoma could ever build a knife like that. So it must have been made in a low-wage country. Maybe India, maybe Pakistan, maybe somewhere in the East. I don't know. I found some internet sources that hint that it might be Pakistan, but nothing detailed. In any case, I have two more of these knives that have the same kind of sheath with that button. One is this Fairbairn-Sykes Dagger that's also made from folded steel. And it has this bronze golden handle. Really a nice knife. And it has the same kind of seal, see? And obviously it's made by the same manufacturer. Then I have this one, which really is more like a short sword instead of a dagger. See, it has this really, really long blade. And it's also made from folded steel, quite beautiful. I did exchange the handle because I didn't like the original handle at all. It was really poor, and I made my own. And now I like it much more. It's obviously, again, the smith knows how to do blades like this. Isn't that beautiful? I really appreciate it. But again, it has the same kind of, you know, state of Oklahoma seal here. So my theory is that somehow a company working from out of a low-wage country has bought a ton of these rivets and is now using them to make sheath for the knives that they are building. They have been active for a few years because I bought the first one, which is this one, probably in 2010 or so. So help me finding out who is the mysterious maker of these knives using the state of Oklahoma button for the sheath. I'd really love to know. Okay, now let's move on to some serious cutting tests. And we're using what else? Ballistic gelatin. We'll do two tests with each knife. One is a quick cutting test, just cutting quickly over the surface of the gelatin. And the other one is a little hacking test, where we try to hack into the gelatin mass and see how the knives perform. We'll start with the homemade knife and with the quick cutting test first. Okay. Alright, let's look at the damage. That definitely cut quite deep into the gelatin. That would have been a really painful and very, very bloody cut. But of course you can also see that the knife shape does not allow the blade to enter much deeper than maybe 1.5 inches or something. It is very sharp, but it's just not very long. Now the hacking test. Okay. Well, it looked rather quick, but if you look at the damage, I think the beak has again fully penetrated up until the beginning of the wood support here. Okay, now we're testing the Mtech knife. Kind of hard to really cut this without holding this, because the beak immediately enters and then is stopped by the gelatin mass. So it's a deep cut, but it's actually not much deeper than the cut that the other knives did here. Okay, and now the hacking test. Okay, that penetrated quite deeply, like that. Not bad. Now we're using the mystery knife. Same thing, you can't really drag it because it immediately cuts in, but boy, it penetrated deeply. Wow. Let's immediately do the hacking test, and I expect the best value from this because it's so heavy. Yeah, it was deep, but not so much deeper than the Mtech. Try again. Okay, it is deeper. That's a fairly deep cut. Not bad. Now we'll do some box cutting tests, just to see if the box cutter blade still performs as good as we think. Okay, we'll use the box cutter conversion first. Punch it in, that was easy. Yeah, it is super easy to cut a box with that thing. I think it really works better than a real box cutter because it's so much more ergonomic. And of course you can still cut Karambit style. Okay, now the Mtech. Let's first put it in, easy. Yeah, it does go through the board easily as expected, but not quite as easily as the super thin box cutter blade. And now the mysterious knife. Let's turn this around, give it a fresh cut. Hacking was really easy. And the cut was really easy too. Just about on the same level as this one. But the box cutter test clearly is dominated by the box cutter blade. Alright, now we do some whittling on this hazelwood stick. Let's see. Yep. It's actually really good because even though the blade protrudes a little bit, the blade itself is a lot longer than on a regular box cutter, where most of it would be hidden inside of the case. It's so sharp. Yeah, great whittling knife. Now the Mtech. If you have started with the box cutter, this is so blunt in comparison. And also the serrated part is really bad for whittling. Yeah, still works, but it's actually not bad. That's a big ass whittling knife. Okay, but it's not bad. Because you have a feeling of security, since the curved blade seems like it cannot slip. The sharpness of the blade is really good. And the edge still looks absolutely perfect. So all in all, this one, it's a functional knife. And it's a one of a kind, so it is not mass production. I would say it's mass production handcrafted stuff. So, you know, there's no second one exactly like that, but there are plenty others that are quite similar, but always with a little bit different handle and also a different blade form. So, collector's item, I'd say, but functional and cool looking. The Mtech, great design, great manufacturing quality, really, really low price. I mean, come on. 22 euros or even $15 in the US. That's nothing for a knife like this. And actually, I think that it's also cool that it fits even my big hands very comfortably. Not a problem at all. This is really good for everyday carriage. And it can take some kind of abuse, since it also has a stainless blade. It doesn't really need a lot of servicing. I think I can recommend this knife because it's so affordable. Well, the last one, the handmade little beak. I don't know why, but I always appreciate my handmade stuff. It's just so much cooler if you've made something yourself. And therefore, I love it, but I really don't want to judge if this is the best knife in the entire test series. But you can find out, because here comes the tutorial how to make one of these. So what do we need to make this little sharp tooth? We need a Stanley blade. And it's absolutely fine if that is a used one and no longer sharp, since we're going to give it a new edge anyway. You need a little bit of plywood, something like in between 6 to 10 millimeters, it doesn't really matter so much. A few screws, and if you want scales, then some leftover wood. First thing that we need to do is make a curved blade from the straight blade. And as you see, the length is about the same. Now we just have to give it this mean curve. Then you take a wet piece of cloth and clamp the blade in. This is important because we need to cool the blade when we grind it, otherwise it will lose the hardness. And now we take the Dremel, or you can also use an angle grinder or a power file or whatever you have handy, and start grinding. And as you see, we now have the viciously curved blade. And now what we have to do is we have to cut it here as well. Now we cut out the handle, one part of it. You actually need this twice. And you see this is the way how the blade is finally going to be in the wood. And here you can also see that you can attach the blade here and here, plus here, so that it really is clamped in solid. Now you take the blade and put it on the piece of wood, exactly in the final position. And you clamp it into the vise, and then you push the blade into the wood, like that. And as you see, it has now indented the blade into the wood. Now you take a small drill and drill 3 holes here, here and here into one side of the wood. Now we drill some holes through the wood so we can combine both grip plates. Now drill those 3 small holes through the other side. And widen them up on the other side. Now put the parts together and bring them into shape. Specifically thin down this part so it looks a little bit more like a blade instead of just a chunk of wood. This is how it should now look like. You see it's tapering towards the tip and towards the edge as well. Now we can put in the blade. Now we have to sharpen the blade, and I like to do this outside of the knife and like that with the Dremel. And now it is basically finished. The rest is beautification. We'll do it anyway. Alright, it's finished, and now I have 2 matching pieces, as you see. I can now do a mini double Alice, if you know what I mean. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this little video. I just want to show you one of the slingshots that I've made for a Patreon patron. And that is because I have a $200 category that I probably need to discontinue, since it's really so much work that my hourly fee is probably below minimum. But anyway, at the $200 stage, I will make a custom slingshot for you. So this guy, really friendly guy who did that, asked me to do a slingshot that is shaped like a ram bone, but he wanted a heavy counterpart below, underneath the frame, to stabilize it. And he also wanted dark scales. So I made this one for him. Let me show you its features. So as you see, it has a ram bone design, and the scales are made from Cocobolo wood, and it's a multiplex frame, of course. I think that I gave it a world-class polish. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it has a pommel, and of course the pommel is detachable, so that you can truly end an opponent rightly. Sorry, Scalagreen, for stealing your meme. The pommel itself is really heavy. The total weight of the slingshot with the pommel is 380 grams. Not too heavy, but nice. And without it's only 137 grams. So the rest of the weight is all in the steel ball. And you see, you can shoot it without the steel ball if you want something portable and lightweight. And you can always reattach steel ball if you are so inclined. I organically shaped the base to make it looking cool. How did I make this one? Well, I started out with finding a ball. It was very rusty, so I drilled a hole in it and put the threaded rod in it, and then I put it in the drill and remove the stain with sandpaper and the file. And then I inserted the thread into the frame itself. I sawed out the Cocobolo scales, first by splitting a huge block of Cocobolo with a chainsaw, and then shaping it, and then gluing it on, and then a lot of file work. It was plenty of file work. And of course the polishing took almost as long as the entire other build. And again, the idea is that this is kind of balancing the frame, but also you can use it as a self-defense, like emergency club, like that. Plus, of course, the ending your opponent rightly thing. So, I hope you liked this, because that's it for today. Thanks and bye-bye.